Welcome everyone to today's webcast. We're focusing on Civil 3D standards and managing them with the Survey Template Manager within the CIM Manager Suite from CTC. My name is Brian Lewandowski. I'm the Civil Product Manager at CTC Software, and I'm going to be running the presentation for you today. So what I wanted to talk about first is, what do current processes look like for managing standards in your survey templates? And a lot of the stuff is built around the survey codes, so topo codes, for example. And changes in those can have a big ripple effect across your standards, be it in your description key sets or what have you. The interfaces to make those changes or to build perhaps a new survey template are often quite slow to work in. The description key set, the figure prefix database, style settings, of course, as well. And it ends up taking too much time, really, and the result is typically you don't find time to do it, and the templates are subpar. And in another case, oftentimes a survey manager, perhaps someone who oversees or makes decisions on the survey code list, they either don't want to or don't know how to work in a survey template to be manipulating things like description keys and things like that. And so the results overall with this, we end up with mediocre templates and ultimately slower production because there is manual work happening that doesn't have to be done. Layering, appearance of things, labeling of things isn't behaving quite the way it could if things were set up just right. There's a lot of considerations. There's layers, there's Civil 3D styles, of course, and all of those are referenced into two big interfaces, the description keys and the figure prefix database. So what the Survey Template Manager does, and that's a tool set within the CIM Manager Suite highlighted below there, is it'll sync template settings from Excel. And why are we interested in Excel? Well, it's a very easy and universal interface within which to work. And so we can create or edit description key sets by syncing with Excel, and we can do the same for figure prefix databases. Now, some of the other tools in the CIM Manager Suite support a variety of other workflows in survey templates, but our focus today is specifically the Survey Template Manager. I will mention a couple others along the way as it makes sense. So some common applications. What are we using the Survey Template Manager for? For creating a new code list. Perhaps there's a new standard, a new client you have, and you need to build an entirely new survey template, a second one. Or maybe you're overhauling your standards and you're just making a new one entirely. Maybe you're making updates to your code list. There aren't enough codes in there. Or maybe it's kind of outdated and you just need to make a lot of changes to that. That can be pretty slow and tedious. Or maybe all the styles and layers and settings within those templates, so many of which are referenced in the description keys and the figure database, maybe we've got work to do there. Either way, the workflow is fairly simple, and it's the same for whatever you might be doing, creating new or making changes to an existing survey template standard. And it starts with simply exporting description keys. Using the Survey Template Manager, we export them to Excel. Now, if you don't have anything created, you would just be exporting an empty Excel template, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. And then you work in Excel. You're adding codes, styles, layers, and we're going to actually spend some time doing that today because I want to show what that looks like in Excel so you can understand why we are moving to Excel to manage these standards in this way. There's a lot more flexibility and speed that we have in Excel that we simply don't have in Civil 3D. Once you've done that work in Excel, you sync back to Civil 3D with the Survey Template Manager, and all those changes within Excel will push to either creating a new standard or updating the existing one based on what you changed in the Excel spreadsheet. And we can do the same for the figure prefix database with Survey Template Manager. We export it, we add codes and styles, layers, and so forth. and we sync back to Civil 3D. Now again, our focus was on Survey Template Manager, but we can do other syncing of this sort with other tool sets in the CIM Manager Suite. Layer Boss, for example, allows Excel syncing for your entire layer manager, your layer properties manager, as well as your Civil 3D object layers. We showed that in detail in a webcast, a previous one. So with that, I'm going to jump into Civil 3D, and we're going to walk through this. So we're going to be working in Civil 3D a bit, and then in Excel. And I'm going to skip over some of the redundancy that we might have, so you get the gist of the workflow and how you might do this on your end with Survey Template Manager. So what I've got opened here is a fairly blank template. You'll notice the layers. We don't have any layers in there. If I look at some of these survey-related styles, like the point styles and the label styles, I don't have any of those in there. It's a pretty empty template, just made from the ACAD template. I do, however, have some blocks loaded into here. So I've brought some of my survey symbology that I want showing up. I've loaded those blocks in here, but nothing else is created. So this is kind of the starting point. We're starting with the scenario where we are creating a new template or perhaps a new code list. And so the workflow, before we even create layers, if you're making a new code list and you're going to have new layers associated with that, go right to the description key set first and work on that, because we're going to be able to auto-generate layers in this way. And so coming up to the Survey Template Manager, if I open up the Create Edit Description keys, this is where I would load an Excel sheet and sync it to my template. Well, I don't have anything yet, so I simply click the Open Sample Excel file. And then I can save this out, and we will call it the CTC DKS for Description Key Set. And we'll open this in Excel right away. And I'm going to put it on the left screen, and what I have open already on the right is my code list that I've created. So most people are creating that in Excel already, so this ties in nicely with that. But you might have that in a separate Excel spreadsheet. So what we're going to do right off the bat is we're going to move this into our description key set Excel sheet, so that shows up over here. Now, how the Survey Template Manager works, it's syncing with the first tab in the Excel sheet. So we can have any number of supporting tabs that allow us to do different work in them. So a real nice workflow is to have additional tabs where you perhaps manage your cheat sheet for the field. That's on one sheet, and that could even be the master list for your codes, and then we reference that list into our description key set. So here's what the export gave us. Everything's nicely formatted. Some of these fields that are simply yes or no, they have data validation built into them already. But we can copy these over, drop them right here, and we get that code list in there. And what I wanted to show is dropping in automatically the asterisks, but simple enough to just drop them like this. And then moving on, what are the considerations? Well, we've got point styles, we've got layers to think about, and another thing we can do is perhaps just use this second tab for layer prefixes and suffixes. And the reason I recommend doing this is because it gets really easy and quick to create the layers based on kind of a formulaic system. And this is one of the reasons why we're going to Excel with this. So perhaps everything's prefixed with V node, or maybe some of them are V symbol, for example. In that case, I can just copy those around as appropriate. So I think you get the idea, right? We can copy and paste this stuff. And then for a suffix, we can start typing in what we want. Can't type anything in here. There we go. Water, curb, these kinds of things, right? And this is why I like to do this in Excel, is because obviously really fast again. And go on and so on like that, where we fill out all of our layers. Then we can use some of that simple formulas, some of those simpler formulas I was talking about with the ampersand. That'll build out our actual layer names. So instead of manually typing all this stuff, it gets really quick. See if that formula is working yet over here. There it goes. Not sure why that wasn't working before, but what I want to do is the and quote asterisk, and that brings that in. So we'll drag and drop that. And then the layering itself, we can pull that from our working sheet over here. Or just copy them in where we grab the values. Again, you may not do the formulas like this. You may not maintain them as you build out everything after the first time you build it, but it can be handy doing it the very first time. There those layers come in. Okay. So what else? What is nice about the Survey Template Manager? You'll notice there's a couple other columns, your point style, and then a unique one, block name. That doesn't normally show up in the description key set in Civil 3D. We've added that on the export through Survey Template Manager because what it'll do is it'll export all the block names that are in that template. And so when it comes to creating some new point styles, we can automate that in this way. So perhaps this is supposed to be ARV-CTC for my point style name. And it's going to tell me it doesn't match the data validation, and that's fine. But if I type something in that doesn't show up in the drop-down, and you notice there's only standard in the drop-down, that's because that's the only point style I had in my template when I exported. But we can start to force automatic style creation by referencing the block name and giving it a point style name that we choose. Looks like I copied that in the wrong spot. And so on and so forth like this. Now back a curve, do I want a unique point style for that? That one I probably don't need. So maybe there's just a simple standard one, or maybe you call it an X, and if you want to put your company name after it, you can do that as well. And I don't really have any block name to reference with that. And drag this stuff down, assign my point styles. And some of these will be unique. Obviously, again, FES-CTC. This one we want to reference the flared end section block. Storm manhole. Okay. Same with point label styles. It'll automate the creation of these. So maybe it's a number, elevation, description, and I want it to generate that label style for me. I can just go ahead and assign those. So everything you build out in the description key set, it'll assign that, or that you do in Excel, that'll assign it in the description key set. Anything you leave blank, it's just going to take the default setting in Civil 3D. So for example, the format column, put some common values in there. Perhaps on our trees we want to have a diameter come through, so we're going to grab the first parameter, and then maybe even we want to have that parameter for the diameter scale scale the size of it. So all that stuff, all those options you have in Civil 3D, they all show up here, and you can just copy this stuff around as you see fit. Okay, let's go ahead and save this, and let's bring it back into Civil 3D and create our description key set. So back to our template here. Notice we don't have any description key set in here. I come up here and I run the create edit description keys. I browse out to that Excel file. And then I've got create a new DKS. I don't have one in this drawing, so there isn't anything to sync to, but that would show up. And then I've got some options here. The first are grayed out. They'll show up when I'm syncing. And I've also got create new point and label styles. I certainly want to do that. I typed a bunch of new style names. I want it to auto-generate those styles for me, saving me a lot of time. Now on the second screen, I get a preview of what's about to happen here. And obviously everything is new codes. And then it's color coding styles and layers that don't exist yet. And so it's just telling me that those are new options that are showing up. So if I hit OK to this, it's telling me 47 new codes. I'll hit OK, and then showing up in my template now is a description key set that matches exactly what I created in Excel. And this is the beauty of Survey Template Manager. We get to work in Excel, push those changes back to here. Here's those tree codes where we assigned some scaling and I've applied to the XY. There's all that layering that showed up. And then some of those unique point styles as well. So the FES, that shows up here. If I look into that point style, it referenced that particular block that I was after. So some organizations will create a unique point style for every single code. Some will do it just for the unique symbology. Whatever you choose, you can go ahead and do that. And you can get creative with any kind of formulas you want to create in Excel, using multiple tabs to kind of shape those layer names, those style names, and so on. Now moving on, we've built our description key set. We'll touch on some editing in a bit. But what about the figure prefix database? That's another big table that's much like an Excel interface, but really clumsy to work in. And so I need to create my key set. And instead of doing it manually through the native interface, we're going to again build out an Excel sheet first. So just like the description key set, I can open up the figure prefix database option and open a sample Excel file right here. And it will again give me a empty template, so to speak, where I can do my work in here. I can put this off to the right side and take the description key set, put off to the left. And here we can just simply copy in those codes. Now we're not going to need all of them. We are going to want some. So let's paste them in and then just simply go through and delete out the ones we know aren't going to generate line work. So cleanouts, air release valves, control points, these types of things that are symbology that aren't going to generate line work for us. Okay. What else is great in Excel? We can do find replacing. You can't do that natively in Civil 3D. So I want to get rid of those asterisks. The trick to that is using the little squiggly symbol and replace it with nothing. I can do replace all and get rid of those. And then I build out my description key set. Is this stuff a break line? Is it a lot line? A lot of the stuff, we're not going to have it be lot lines, but some of it might be break lines. So I'll default everything to yes, and then perhaps some of them obviously some of the utilities are not going to be break lines. Some more symbology to delete out of here. Okay, so build that out. Then again, with the layering. So we could do this from a second tab again. Perhaps I've got some simple layering I want to build out based on these codes. And I'll show you that little that formula trick again, see if we can get it to work correctly in here. So back a curve, perhaps it's the standard prefix is V line, and then curve. So on and so forth. And then let's go ahead and use that formula. It's just simply using the ampersand operator in Excel, and it'll build those formulas for you. So let's say we typed all that out, got all of our line work, layers, and I can just drag this formula down. Now we can copy and paste, or if this is going to work for us, we'll run the formula to this second sheet. For some reason that's not working, so we'll just copy and paste the values. Again, it's often something you might just do temporarily on your initial build, but either way. And then same with the point styles. We could have it generate figure styles for us automatically. So now as you build this stuff and you sync it back to Civil 3D, let this continue to be your master source. This is where you do the work, this is where you do the editing. So let's minimize this, come back to Civil 3D. And we've got create, edit, description keys. And then next to it here, create, edit, figure prefix database. I'm going to browse out to that one I just made, CTC, this one right, FPD. I'm going to create a new figure prefix database, and I'm going to generate new figure line styles. Now, a figure prefix database, as you may know, is not drawing specific, but whatever drawing or template you have open when you run this, it'll create new styles right within that. Again, a report on everything's about to happen, new layers, new styles created. I can hit OK and confirm that. And then showing up on my survey tab here is my new figure prefix database. So why are we doing this stuff in Excel? Again, the interfaces are really glitchy in here. They're really slow. That's not even the GoToWebinar that's glitching like that. It's just kind of how these interfaces work. And so that's why we're going to Excel, so you can work a lot faster. Now, what you may have noticed, layer generation, that's happening automatically as we work in here. Now you can come in here and start manipulating colors and things like that as you wish. Or if you want to use Layer Boss from CIM Manager Suite, highly recommend it. So I won't spend a lot of time on that, but you want to first build those key sets in the figure prefix databases. Let that layer automation happen, and then export with Layer Boss to manage that layer set in Excel as well. So here's the export option. I'll just show you this briefly. I can export from the current drawing. I can actually include line types from a line type file that's referenced in my options. I can have it add the background color and also include plot styles if I'm using an STB based drawing. So I'm going to hit export to that and open that up right away. Just like we were doing with the description key sets, I get the same thing with my layers. Coming with it, again, all those line types, it pulled it automatically from the lin file. The plot styles that were in my STB, those show up as well, and I can work in here, again, much faster than I might in the layer manager. So again, that's I show that in more detail in the webcast on the general one on building a new Civil 3D template. So what about making changes, right? I've built my new template, but as you know, things are always kind of changing with our standards. As it relates to survey, maybe there's new codes to be added, maybe there's changes to them, that kind of thing. Now you certainly can do it in here, but if it's anything more than a few edits, it really becomes pretty tedious. So, for example, adding a few new codes, we can simply work from our Excel sheet and make those additions right in there. So perhaps there's some new codes here. Let's say we've got a hydrant code to be added, and that's fire hydrant. Maybe there's a shrub code. So just do your work on your code sheet tab if you're maintaining that second tab. And then coming back to your description keys here, if we press and drag those formulas, we'll pull those in as well. Here again, am I supposed to have a unique point style? Yeah, with a hydrant I want that symbol to show up in the point style, but I don't have a hydrant point style, so I can go ahead and create one. Propose hydrant for the block. Maybe it's to have a different label style. I'm going to make one right off the bat. And then the layering, this we had typed manually before. So either way, use the formulas, type it manually. So I can go ahead and save that. Let's do another change as well. Let's say we're using prefixes of V node and V symbol. What would be a pretty major layer change? Well, perhaps we don't want the term node in our layer standard anymore. We could do a find and replace node with, say we want to go to point. Replace all. And that's pretty simple in Excel, but to do it in Civil 3D, it's pretty substantial. So any kind of changes like that, right? Mass replacing, mass editing, it becomes really simple in Excel, and then we simply sync it back to Civil 3D. So let's do that. We're back in here. Let's create, edit our description keys. This time I have the option of syncing to an existing description key set that shows up in the list. And then editing options, there are two options here. There's sync to description key set, and then there's add to description key set. So if you're maintaining a master sheet like this, where you've got your entire code list and all the settings, you always want to do sync, so that if you deleted a few codes, it would remove them from here as well. If you're doing add, it's only going to do additive updating, meaning if you deleted some codes, it would not automatically pull them out of your key set. So be aware of what that is. Again, we want to create new point and label styles. If I hit next to this, we're going to see more information in our report. So new codes, we've got that hydrant and that shrub code, new layers that are going to be generated, and then changed codes, we've got a whole slew of those. All of those new layer names. So I can hit OK to this. And if I look at the description key set again, we're going to see all those updates pushed. So all the layering has changed. There's that hydrant code with the hydrant point style. And of course, inside the point style, it's referencing the hydrant block. Then in the layering, of course, what do I get? Well, now I have some node layers, pretty simple to deal with. Just delete them out of there. Nothing's using those layers anymore. And now I've just converted my whole layering standards. So I'm showing this, with just a dozen or so layers, but think about this with a full template, right? You're working with 100, 200 different layers and codes. The time required to be updating that stuff or creating new gets pretty extensive, and so if we can do that kind of work in Excel and push it back, we're going to be ahead of the game. So just wrapping things up here, some conclusions with Survey Template Manager. Why I created this Survey Template work, it doesn't have to be difficult. Right? So oftentimes we don't get around to doing this stuff because the interfaces are difficult to work in. And no one will argue that Excel isn't faster or more flexible to work in, right? All those kinds of formulas that we were doing, fine replacing, easy drag and dropping, copy and pasting, much easier to work in there. And like I mentioned earlier, you want to maintain some Excel master files in addition to your Civil 3D templates. So don't think of Excel as just this thing where you dump to temporarily. Maintain a master sheet there where you have your code sheet in there, where you use this portion of it for printing cheat sheets for the field crews. And then your first tab, that's what Survey Template Manager will sync with. You can do all your work there as well for what syncs back to Civil 3D. And of course, all of this makes for better template creation and less time, and that makes for more productive staff. That's what we're after with the CIM Manager Suite, and specifically the Survey Template Manager. So those of you who don't have this yet, you might be asking, how do I get a hold of this? It's pretty straightforward. Go to our website, ctcsoftware.com, and you can go to the products and find CIM Manager Suite right in there. Right in there, it'll explain the Survey Template Manager as well as the other tools in there. One of them are free, Line Type Manager. Little videos, descriptions, what all these two tools do. So feel free to check that out there. So with that, thanks for watching, everyone.